What's up, guys? Welcome back to day 14 of my 31 days of Halloween themed drawing tutorials. In today's new video, I'm going to show you how you can draw this cute voodoo doll from start to finish, no time lapse. It's all step by step in real time. So if you want to draw along with me, keep watching. Alright guys, so let's draw a voodoo doll. Starting out, I'm using a 4000 by 4000 300 DPI canvas. For my brush, I'm going to start out sketching, so I'm going to use my HB pencil, which is part of my pencil set. And for my colors, I've already got my color palette made up. You can actually download this color palette for free if you want to follow along with the exact colors that I'm using in today's tutorial. All you have to do is go to my website, bjdell.com, under the YouTube reference section. You can download this. I'll link it in the description below, but it just saves as a JPEG. Go up to your wrench icon, go to add, insert a photo. It's going to bring that color palette into Procreate as a separate layer, and then you can just go through and long press on each of the colors as we go through the tutorial. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch over to black here and just start sketching my voodoo doll. So I'm going to have him kind of have a big head here. We'll kind of have it like tilted to the side here too. Like it's kind of got some weight to it, kind of leaning over, almost in that 3/4 perspective. And you'll see as I'm sketching, number one, keeping it really loose here. Number two, just starting out with really basic shapes to kind of block in where everything goes. I'm not going too much into details right away. And like I said, just using basic shapes to define where everything's at. So I'll have the body come down here, kind of the arm here towards the front, and then have the legs come off here to the side. He's kind of sitting with his legs spread eagle. Those out there like that. Once again, like I said, just using basic shapes to block this out. I think people get too caught up initially starting out trying to just add in the exact lines and details. And when you keep it loose like this, you really allow yourself to kind of build it up. You know, people kind of have problems sometimes drawing characters and drawing the bodies. I think it's because they get too hung up on making everything perfect right off the bat. And there's really not a need for that. You can fine tune stuff as you go in and kind of fix things. So I'm going to have this arm kind of coming down here in the back, kind of splitting off of there. So I think that looks pretty good. Since it's a voodoo doll, I think I'm going to go ahead and have like a spool of thread back here too, maybe like he just got done being made. So you can have this spool here in the back, come down and around, bringing the bottom there too. Now let's go ahead and kind of get the face in here and work on that. So even though I've got the center line to kind of help me see the perspective here, I think I'm going to use that kind of as a stitch line as well. So that's going to kind of come down there and stay in the center. And bring the mouth out and kind of have this kind of crazy as it comes around here. Like that. You can see now just kind of building up the little details here, just using that basic shape that I did at the beginning. That looks pretty good there, and we'll bring this around like a little bit more jaggedy there. Get maybe a button eye over here. And then over here, just maybe some like thicker threads to do another eye over here. All right, kind of have that center line coming down here too with the stitches there. Have some stitches coming down on the foot here. And maybe have the legs have another stitch line there in the center, kind of where the knee would be. Same thing here where the elbow would come down, we'll have kind of a stitch line there. Do the same thing on that side. And then we'll just kind of draw in some needles popping out of them, because of course if it's a voodoo doll, we got to have those. Just kind of just do these around. You can do these, you know, wherever you want, wherever you think looks good. And I think that looks pretty good. So now we're going to start to ink this guy. So to do this, I'm going to go up to my layers here. I'm going to make a new layer. And coming back down to my sketch layer, I'm going to hit the blend mode for the layer here with that N. And I'm just going to drop the opacity down so we can barely see it. I think that's good. I want to fix this head coming around here just a tad bit. There we go. So now let's go ahead and start inking. So for this, I'm going to go back up to that new layer that we made. My color here, I'm not going to ink with black. I've got this really dark brown in here. We're going to go ahead and ink with that color. And then for my inking brush, I'm going to go to my cartooning brush set here. And I'm going to start out just with the standard inker streamline. That's what we're going to begin inking with. And I think I'm going to start here just with the mouth, bringing that down and around. And let's see. Actually, before I do that, let's decide where the color or the light source is coming in from. I always like to do that before I start inking, and the reason why is because heavier lines kind of represent shadows, thinner lines represent being closer to that light source. And I think with this, we'll have the light source coming in from this way. Since this head's really big right here, it'll give us a nice area there for the kind of shine and glow from the light source. So now that we've got that decided, everything over here is going to be a little bit lighter as far as line weight, a little bit thinner lines, and then get heavier as it comes back here. So we're going to start out a little bit thinner, and as we pull down and around, we'll start to get a little bit heavier here towards the back. And we'll just kind of continue that as we go. So this is going to be heavier back here, and it's going to kind of get smaller and thinner as it comes back up and around. That connected a little bit better. So there's that. Let's go ahead and get this bottom part of the lip coming down here. Oops. And for my eraser, I'm going to go back up to my cartooning here and use my standard inker streamline. Just get this line a little bit smaller and tapered in. A little bit heavier back here and up. And same thing here. Taper that one in. Crease the end just a little bit, not have it come out as far. So there's that. Let's go ahead and get this line down the center. Now with these inner lines, I'm going to have these be just a little bit thinner. Don't want them to be as thick as the outlines. Get that coming around, maybe another one down here, kind of coming at a little curve. And I'll just start putting the stitches in. And with these, you'll see I didn't even draw these because we're really just going back and forth with lines kind of alternating directions to give that stitched look. So there we go. We've got that. Let's go ahead and get these in here. Another smaller line here on the inside. And then I'm going to have this one behind it, but I want to make sure these line up right, so I'm going to just draw the entire thing. Obviously, if I would draw it on this layer, I'm going to have to go back in and erase, and I'll probably hit lines that I've already drawn. So I've shown this in a previous tutorial. For stuff like this that overlaps, I like to make a new layer, and then just draw it like I normally would here. One more time. Draw that thinner line in there. Now, since this is on a separate layer, I can go ahead and erase that overlap. And it makes it really easy because I'm not erasing this one that I've already done. And then I can just go ahead and select this and merge down or pinch them together. And now they're all back on the same layer. So a little trick there to kind of save you some headaches of trying to match up lines like that. Might get a little frustrating. And then if you go back in and try to erase the line you've already done, I know that can be just a pain. So use that tip as much as you can. There we go, we've got that eye in there. Let's go ahead and do the eye over here. For this, I'm gonna go ahead and make a new layer again, just because I'm gonna draw the circle around with the shape tool. So basically with this, all you have to do, just draw around with your finger, click the other finger in here, and it's gonna lock it in to a perfect circle. And now this way, with this on a separate layer, I can go up to my arrow here, go into uniform. I can kind of drag this and resize it to get it exactly like I want. So there's that. I'm gonna go ahead and merge this one down now. And then I'm gonna make a new layer for that inside circle. I'm gonna drop my brush size just a tad bit so the inside line's not as thick. And then going back up to my arrow here, I can pull this down to make sure it's the right size. So there we go. Turn my brush back up now. And we've got the circle in there for the button. So let's go ahead and merge these together now. And let's do the X here for the eye. I'll pull out a little bit so I can kind of get it going the same way. Just draw some dots here on the end before it's going into the button. Pull back. There we go. I'm going to switch over now to my standard inker and just kind of add some details here around the bottom of the eye. I like to switch back and forth from my standard inker to my streamline just because quick little motions like this, I think it gives a little bit more of an organic feel if you do it without that streamline turned on. And then let me go ahead and put some extra just kind of dots around. Let's just going to kind of add a little bit more texture and details to what's going on here. A couple more up here. A couple over here. And these are just kind of alternating, putting them wherever. And then you could also just go in and kind of add some extra lines here. Maybe even just some like a little cross hatching like this. Kind of brings home that voodoo doll look. So there we go. Let's go ahead and get those needles in here now. So once again, these are going to overlap. So I think with these, I could go ahead and make a new layer, but I think I'm going to do them on the same layer. And I'm just going to erase first because the needles are going to be pretty thin coming down here. So if I use, let me switch back here to my streamline now. If I use the line tool like this, I can get these pretty close to where I don't really have to worry about that. Do that where that's coming in. Get a circle here. Pull in some lines like this. Add some stuff in there. That looks good. Let's go ahead and do the one over here now. Erase there. Pull these down. That one's got an overlap there, but if I lock it back in there, I think that's okay. And just kind of bring it narrower to the front there. Do the circle up here for that needle head. Bringing some details around like that. So there we go. I think that looks good. Let's go ahead and move on to the body now. So I think I'm going to start here. Bring this down and around. Pulling a neck up here. Bring the center line kind of down. We'll do that just random stitching here. Once again, just using some thinner lines. So with this, you can either not press as hard or you can drop the size. Totally up to you what you feel more comfortable with. It gives you the most control over what you're using. So there we go. Let's go ahead and start on this foot now. So Let's see, bring this around. It's going to be a big swooping motion here. We'll start right here. We'll bring that around like that, pull out and see. I want this to be a little bit more straight, so let's start at the bottom here. I think that looks pretty good there. Bring around the top here. Like a little overlap there, like it's kind of coming in. And it's got that kind of fold of the fabric or whatever he's made out of. Bring that down into the body. And we'll go ahead and get these lines in here for the stitching. And one more here. There we go. Let's go ahead and get the arm next. So for this, I'm going to bring around, let's erase this just a tad, bring this front hand kind of around here and back. Clean up my lines there where they didn't connect right. There's that, and then let's go ahead and pull up the arm here in the back, then towards the front. We'll kind of have a little overlap here too. There we go. Clean up this a little tad bit up here. Get that connected. And the stitch line here. Let's go ahead and get this arm in over here. All right, so that looks good. Let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and do the needles next on this one since we've got those done. Want this to be a little bit thicker towards the top here. So pull one down here, one on the other side, and then just that line across where it's kind of digging into the fabric. Back up here for the circle. There's that one. And we'll go ahead and do the leg over here. Once again, a little bit thicker lines this way. Oops, had a break there. There's that one, and pull out and make sure that I get the right kind of flow to this line. So I want that foot to kind of work the same way as that one. So there we go. Get this one here. And then bring this back up here. That looks good. Do a stitch line here. And then the stitch lines across here. There's that. And you'll see this line's pretty thick up here. I probably would have made this a little bit thinner compared to these down here, but that's okay. I'm gonna leave it as is. I think once we get the colors in there, it won't be as noticeable. And get the circle for the head here. There we go. Little part where it goes into the fabric. All right, so there's that. We got the majority of the body done except for this one needle here. Get that one in there. Circle again for the head there. It's coming into the body. And then let's do this spool. I think I'm going to do this one on a new layer too, just because drawing behind there is going to be easier this way. So we'll draw one oval here. I'm going to do a new layer too, so I can kind of play with these ovals as I do them. Didn't lock in. So the inner oval here. And bring this around. The inner oval actually worked out pretty good. I didn't really need to put that on a separate layer, but hey, I did anyways. So let's go ahead then and that one. We'll just bring that one down to the bottom. So we're gonna slide this to the left and we're gonna duplicate. So that way we can kind of cheat on this one. So that way it's all lined up where it should be. And then I'm gonna thin it out just a tad bit. So if I go to freeform here and pull it up, I don't want that line super thick here on the bottom because I'm gonna make that outside line thicker. So we got that locked in there. And then we're just gonna go ahead and follow that curve around here, back up and connected to that other line of the spool. There's that. Let's go ahead and do the erasing here now on this. There's that, and we're gonna erase here as well because that's gonna come down, the spool will. I'm gonna go ahead and combine these now so the spool's all on one, and then I'm gonna make a new layer again to get these lines down here. Don't want to worry about the overlapping, so just makes it easier to do that new layer. Get this line right. A little bit thicker there. And then I'm going to start to pull this around in that curve down here at the bottom. Fix those there where they split off. There we go. So we got the bottom in there. I don't think that really looks right though. We need it to follow that same flow as that other bottom line. If that looks better or not, we'll see. I think it looks pretty good. Erase these overlapping ones. Once again, I'm going to merge these together, so merge down. And then I'm going to do one more layer here just for the, oops, I messed up that little line there. And then one more layer here just for the threads coming across here. So I'm just going to do this really quick and easy. So some kind of tapered lines of various thicknesses, just to give that appearance of the thread coming in there. Wrapped around. And going back to my eraser, I'm just gonna erase the parts that went outside and the parts that went over the actual character. And a couple more down here. Pencil tips coming off, so I was missing out some strokes there. All right, so I think that is good. Let's have like a little thread here coming off the back, trailing down, and then we can have this kind of come down and around here on the ground. Like that, just so got a little something extra going on. I think that looks good. So let's go ahead and merge these down. And then one more time. So now all the lines are on a single layer here. So now we can start coloring. So to do that, let's go ahead and turn off our sketch layer. And we're gonna go ahead and set the top layer now with our lines to reference. That's gonna allow us to drag and drop our colors into our bottom layers here. So let's do that now. So I'm gonna make a new layer here and drag it underneath my sketch layer. This is gonna be for my colors. I'm gonna go back up to my colors now here, and I'm gonna choose this first brown and just start to drag and drop in the colors for the body. Get these in here. And that I hit the line. So recommend zooming in a little bit if you're having problems hitting the lines, just so you can get right up there to the edge where those go. So there's that. I'm gonna leave the body as a different color on a separate layer. So we're gonna make a new layer. Usually I do color flats all in one layer, but we're gonna do something a little bit different with this one, and that's why we're gonna switch over. So now that we're on a new layer, let's go up to our colors again, and let's choose this other brown, the next one over, just for the inside of the button. And then let's go ahead and do the same thing here on the spool. We can use it for that as well. Do that for the spool. And then let's go back up and we're going to use this dark brown now. We're going to do that for the inside of the spool here. And then the circle coming around that button. And then once again, we're still on this new layer here. Everything else is going to go on there for colors. I'm going to go to this color here. This kind of peachish color. Let's do that. Those in there. Zoom back out. I think that looks pretty good. I do think maybe the mouth here needs some actual stitching too. So I'm going to go back in and do that. Going back up to my reference layer, that's the lines. We're going to add some in there too. I don't want to do these regular stitches though. I want to do some thicker ones to kind of play off this. So to do that, we're going to switch back to that inking color that we first used. And I'm going to go up to that reference layer again. And I'm just going to kind of erase some parts like this. This is where those stitches are going to come in. Have some more kind of curves in here. All right, so now that we've got those, let's go ahead and go back to our brush and that streamline. And then let's just bring in some stitches like this inside here. I don't often, after I start doing color flats, come back in and actually add stuff to the inks, but in this case, just looking at it, I'm like, yeah, I think something extra needs added. So every once in a while, you might take a step back and look at your work and think, okay, I could do this here. A lot of times that'll come at the end too, if you get kind of finished with stuff and say, yeah, there's just something that looks off. And that's one reason why digital art is so awesome, because obviously if we were inking this with a brush pen on paper, we wouldn't be able to go back like this and go over top and erase stuff. So yay for digital art. All right, so there we go. I think that's cool. Let's go ahead and go back to our color that we used here. And we're going to go back down to that layer 4 and then just drag and drop our colors in there again. This one might even be easier to just color by hand here. There you go. Yeah, I think that looks a little bit better, a little bit more exciting to look at. Let's go back up to our colors now and let's see. Actually, we'll use that color here for the threads as well. So we can just go ahead and color this in. Pull this around here and then back up and over. From here, we can't drag and drop it in because we have reference turned on. So if we turn off reference on the top layer, we can now move back to that layer and drag and drop. But we need to turn reference back on so that we can do those needles. So let's do that next. We got reference turned back on. Let's choose this lighter gray here. We'll do that for the bodies of the needles. Oops. Getting pretty tight on those since they're so small. And then we're gonna go to that darker gray for the tops of the needles. So we'll just have those a little bit darker of a color. All right, so there we go. I think that looks good. I think it's time to start our shadows and highlights next. So to do that, let's go ahead and go up to our layers. And we're gonna make a new layer here. And for this one, we're going to, let's do something first here. Before I get to that, let's backtrack. So like I said, we set these up on 2 different layers. So the reason why is because I want to add a little bit of texture to this. So with the Voodoo dolls, of course, they're fabric. They got either that burlap or that rugged texture to them. So we're going to do that. And that's why we've got those colors set up on a different layer. So I'm going to make a new layer here. And then I'm going to set this as clipping mask. So this is going to allow us to color on this layer, and it's only going to go on this layer. So it's going to stay in the lines. We don't have to worry about going outside of the lines. So to do this next part, we're going to go back up to our color palette. We've got this brown all the way on the edge here. That's what we're going to use. And we're going to go ahead then and go back to our brushes. I'm going to switch over to my texture pack now. And for this one, I'm going to go ahead and use the denim brush. And I'm just going to go over top of the body. And it gives it that textured feeling, super fast, super easy. That's why I love some of these texture brushes. Just really speeds up the process, and you see how fast that was. So now that we got those, we are good. What I want to do now is I want to actually merge these 3 layers together. So all of our colors are on one now that we've got that in there. And that's going to allow us to go in here now and start adding the shadows and the highlights and not have to worry about having 2 separate layers. So let's do that next. So new layer, and I just dropped my Apple Pencil on the floor. Oh my goodness, what is going on in my life? All right, so new layer here. We're going to set this as clipping mask. And it's going to allow us, once again, to just color on that layer below us. And then for this color, we're going to go ahead and use this dark purple here at the bottom. That's going to be our shadow color. And I'm just going to go in with, once again, my cartooning brush here. I'm going to use my standard inker. And I'm just going to pull down some pretty big areas here and get these laid in, so I can kind of see what this is going to look like once I start to change the opacity of this. And yes, we are going to change the opacity. We're not going to have this big purple blob of a shadow here because that looks horrible. So I'm just going to pull in a big amount here. Probably pulling some more down this side and along the back there. All right, so now that we've got a big portion in there, let's go up to our layers. And we're going to go to the blend mode here under the layer, click that little N, and we're going to drop down the opacity on this till we get it to where we want and think it looks good. I think, honestly, about there, 17% is where I'm going to leave it. You can play around with it, decide if you want it more or less. And now we're just going to go back in and start to add some more shadows around here. So I'm going to do, back to my brush here, do some shadows here at the bottom here. Build these up down here. Of course, here underneath the mouth, it's going to have a big shadow, and then I'm going to have to go back in and erase the overlaps there. But I think it's better to do this overlap than try to draw each individual part underneath that mouth, because it's probably not going to line up every single time, and it's a lot faster to do it like that. There's that. Bring in some more around here. Bring this one down and around a little bit more. I'm going to turn on my streamline inker now, so I have a little bit more control over the lines. I'm going to do a shadow here running along the back of this stitching. Bring that up here. And then I'm going to have this curve into this other shadow a little bit better here. So it's going to have a little bit more, instead of that sharp taper there, it's going to have a little bit more of a rounded curve to it. Like that. There we go. Pull some shadows here. There's going to be some underneath here. Here's the back, even here underneath, top here. Erase that one just a tad bit, get those to line up better. And that's what I was talking about here. Just that two part right here is kind of hard to line up. So if you do bigger areas like that one down there, it's going to be even more frustrating. Bring that down a little bit more, and then probably pull out here from the eye a tad bit more. See, I keep bringing that down farther and farther, but I think that looks pretty good there. Let's go ahead now. I've got this super shadowed in, and I've talked about before, if an area is like this, I like to go back in and just take out part of the shadow. Even though this might not be 100% perfect with where the light source is coming from, I think it looks better to do these edge highlights just because it breaks up the design and lets the viewer see that there are two separate colors here, so it doesn't look 100% just like a giant blob of a shadow, and you can tell that there are shadows there and there's two different colors there because of that. I want this to be a little bit more tapered there. It follows that down and around. So that looks good there. Maybe pull in a little bit of a shadow here at the bottom of this arm. And then we'll do some shadows here on the spool of thread. Certain ones of these will bring a shadow down underneath. Just kind of build that up a tad bit. I'm not going to do every single one because I've got so many lines in here. I think that would be just a little overkill. So there's that. Let's go ahead and get one here around the eye in the back. And kind of around here too. That comes in. All right, do some more kind of shadows here along the back of the needles, underneath and down there. Same thing here. And then we're going to do the inside of this one darker too. All right, so that looks good. Now we're going to go ahead and do the highlights. So once again, we're going to go up here and make a new layer. And we're going to set this one to clipping mask as well. Going back up to our colors now, let's go ahead and go to white right here. And I'm going to make sure my streamline's turned on. I'm just going to pull up, let's get a pretty big highlight here up at the top. I'm going to go back in and adjust my opacity to see what we're working with. Erase that overlap there on the needle. All right, so now we're going to go back up to our layers, go to the blend mode here, drop the opacity, and I'm going to have this pretty low. I think probably about there, about 12% on this, maybe a little bit higher. 16, I think it looks pretty good there. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add some extra lines around here. You want to make this one a little bit smaller as it comes down. A little bit too big there. looks a little bit better. One around here. Go back and erase if we went outside. I have kind of like some ovals in here, kind of giving off a shine from that one. Some down here. Same thing here on the spool. One there kind of towards the top. And then on the arms. Leg here coming around. Belly. A bigger one there. And then same thing down the front of the arm and the hand. So there we go. Maybe do a couple of little crosshatch ones here. Stuff in there like that. And I think that looks good. So that's pretty much our finished design. Let's go ahead and add a background to this guy now. So to do that, I'm going to go down to my very bottom layer. I'm going to make a new layer, and then I'm going to go back to that dark brown that we used for the outline. And I'm going to pull in just a kind of half circle, maybe bigger than half circle here. I think that looks good. So it's just got a little bit of a background. And I see too, I need to go back to my white and my highlights here real quick because I forgot to hit the needles. And I can't forget about that. So let's do that real quick. I'm just back and forth today. Sorry, guys. This is what you get when you get a real-time, no edits drawing tutorial. All right, so we got the background there. Let's go ahead and add some color to that. So I'm gonna go up to my colors here. I'm gonna choose this red. And actually, before we do that, let's kind of connect this circle here. So I'm gonna go back to that layer that's on, because I want to drag and drop this in. It's gonna be kind of a pain to fill that in. So if we start here, you're not gonna be able to see this section because it's gonna be behind everything. But if we drag this in, that's going to allow us to actually go in here and fill it rather than having to color it by hand. So I think I've got that connected. We'll see here in a second. Fingers crossed, maybe I don't. Let's see here. I'm gonna turn off everything and see how close that is to being connected. It looks pretty connected. I think the color drop threshold might be off. So let's try this again. I'm gonna drag, leave my pencil down here. Ah, that's what it is. You see, I still have this set to reference. So that's why. So we're gonna turn reference off and try this again. So that's reference is turned off. Boom, there we go. So sometimes if you're filling in too much, your lines might be connected, but reference is turned on. So always make sure, I know I talked about that earlier, needing to turn off reference, but I forgot about it when we got to this part. So there we go, we got kind of the background circle there. And then finally here, let's go ahead and grab this other color down here. It's kind of grayish blue. And we're gonna go ahead and make another new layer at the bottom. I'm gonna go back up here to my texture. And I think I'm just gonna use sand for this. And let's just bring in the right size here. Just kind of bring in just a little bit of a shadow here at the bottom. I usually don't do shadows on my designs like on the bottom, just because a lot of times it's just the character. This one obviously is sitting. There's obviously some type of something he's propped down on. The spool's there too, so I think throwing this in might be a little bit necessary on this one. And then I'm just gonna do a real light, smaller shadow underneath this string to make that pop a little bit more up at the front. Just hitting certain areas, not even going all the way around. A little bit here and a little bit there. All right, so there we go. I'm gonna select that brown again that we started with. And that's our design. So last thing I need to do, switching back to my cartooning brush, is I just need to sign this guy and we will be finished for today. All right, so there we go, a voodoo doll for day 14 of my 31 days of Halloween themed drawing tutorials. Hopefully you guys liked today's video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell for notifications so you can get alerted when I post new videos. So much month left, got days 15 through 31, so many more tutorials to come. I want you guys to check them out. If you guys do take part in these tutorials and make designs based on these, I want to see them. If you post them online on Instagram or Twitter, tag me at BJDell. And also, if you're on Facebook, I've got an art group over there called Keep Creating, a group for artists by artists, a place where you can post your artwork, meet friends, give feedback, get feedback. It's an awesome place to be and want you guys to be a part of it as well. As for me, I can be found online, bjdell.com, as well as the new podcast, Make Money With Your Art, available wherever you listen to podcasts at. So that's it for me today. Hopefully you guys will join me tomorrow. And until next time, keep creating.